is calling you. The universe is calling me. It speaks both day and night. It's full of dark and light.
Hello and welcome to SkyTour Livestream. Actually, this is SkyTour Radio, a new and improved SkyTour Radio here on kgraradio.com. I was thinking about SkyTour Livestream earlier, actually. It's the companion stream to SkyTour Radio. I'm Mark D'Antonio here with my new and improved co-host, Amanda Curran. Hi there, Amanda. How are you tonight?
I'm new and improved. How are you?
New and improved. Yeah, I know. I'm silly like that. I'm okay. Make sure that you check out Amanda's YouTube channel, by the way, folks. It's at DannyFan1, DHANIFAN, numeral 1 on YouTube. And she puts up the news of space for our broadcasting week. It's SkyTour News time over there on Amanda's channel. And she has a lot of other fun things up there, too. And you can subscribe to the companion stream to SkyTour Radio, which is SkyTour Livestream, as I misidentified my show right from the start. SkyTour Livestream is a place where you can go to see the deep sky unfold right before your eyes. We have a real observatory with a real research telescope, and it's tooling around the sky, showing you these wonders in seconds, not minutes, that it normally takes to show these deep sky wonders, all courtesy of the SkyTour Livestream cameras that are very, very high-end cameras. Lastly, if you're interested in something physical to take home with you, you can go check out our Facebook site, which is called the FX Models Planetary Replicas site, or you can check out the website fxmodels.com, and you can see in the stores on both locations we have these very cool 3D printed Moon, Mars, and Pluto craters and landscapes. And these are taken directly from the NASA space probes that have visited these places. And if you're interested in sending us a message or talking to me or Amanda, you can email me now, and you can email Amanda now at skytourradio@kgraradio.com. And I think it'll be fun, So Amanda and I have had a great time doing this show. We are just over a year into this, and we went from 1 hour to 2 hours. And we owe it all to you guys because you are the greatest listeners on earth. I want to welcome you to our broadcast each and every week. So, what are we going to do tonight? Well, let's see. We're going to start with an exoplanet roundup, as usual. Then we're going to tighten our belts. That is to say, we're going to finish up talking about the powerhouse stars in Orion's belt, which is visible now at sunset in the south if it's clear. All right, then we're going to talk about stellar nurseries, where stars are born. And it makes sense to do that with Orion in mind because the Orion constellation has one of the closest and most incredible stellar nurseries around, and that is called the Orion Nebula. And it's a beautiful place. There's a lot going on there. We've learned so much science about the universe by peering into the Orion Nebula. And the Hubble Space Telescope has some amazing photos of the Orion Nebula. And I just can't wait until we have the James Webb Telescope point itself over at the Orion Nebula once it's up. I mean, I don't know, Amanda, if you've heard the latest on the James Webb Telescope. I know you talked about it at one point, but have you seen the latest launch date or possibility for putting the James Webb up at all? Do you know?
Me? No. Last I heard, I thought it was 2021, but I don't know.
Okay. Well, you know what? That's okay.
And I probably heard that from you, actually, so I have no idea.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I was just wondering because you do SkyTour News. I was just wondering if maybe you came across that. You'll see those nuggets probably before me.
I haven't seen an update as of yet. I will keep my eyes out.
No worries. No worries. I'm glad that one of us is on it. We want the James Webb up there because it's also an amazing exoplanet, exoplanet hunter, and it uses instrumentation that are far in excess of Hubble's, far in excess of Kepler's. It's like a Kepler Space Telescope and Hubble Telescope, together in the same package. That means we got a lot going for it. It has a lot going for it. But we also have something else up there that is doing some amazing planet finds. Now, you might remember that a few months ago, the Transiting Exoplanet Survey Satellite, known as TESS, T-E-S-S, was launched. And TESS has actually been in operation for about 3 months. And in the first 3 months, it's found 3 planets. All right. But it also has over 280 additional candidates it's already discovered. So it's really doing a fantastic job. And it's looking everywhere. It's not just looking, in one spot like Kepler. So each generation of planet hunting, units that we have, or planet hunting technology that we create, it leapfrogs the past in its capabilities. And I actually did a project for the president of the company that built TESS. And, really, he's a person that's actually very dedicated to finding these answers. Obviously very dedicated to getting the right answers, too. Now, I think that, excuse me. So I was plugged into TESS for a long time and feel it has the potential to actually leapfrog Kepler tremendously. Excuse me. Hold on one second. Yeah, sorry. It was a coughing fit out of nowhere, but only when you go on the air, you see.
And that's what I love about live radio.
Oh, yeah, right. Exactly. I'm still coughing. Hold on.
Well, I find things like this absolutely endearing. And that's why live radio is so much more entertaining than pre-records. I feel safe with pre-records, but this is fun, isn't it?
I tend to think so, but if it's not me doing the coughing, I guess.
That's why I like you being the main host, and I can just sit here on mute and cough and fidget and do whatever, but...
Me.
Yeah, you don't get that luxury as often.
No, but that's okay. So the other thing about TESS is besides finding an additional 280 planetary candidates, okay, there's another thing that it's done, which is actually quite amazing. Its sensitive cameras have picked up 100 transient, that means short-lived events out there in space. Most are outbursts from stars, such as major flare events and so forth. But also, it's discovered 6 brand new supernovae, that is the destruction of stars. So a brand new death of a star, that's almost an oxymoron, But it's found 6 of those. And it found them before any ground-based telescopes could possibly see them. And that's what we find interesting, because they were very dim initially, or they were in a different range that we couldn't tell right away. But let's talk about the planets it found. There was 3 confirmed, possibly a 4th, but the first test find was around a star called Pi, like in the Greek letter pi, and it's called Pi Mensae, Mensae. Now the constellation is Mensa. All right, we'll talk about that in a minute. But Pi Mensae C is the planet that was found by TESS and confirmed. And this planet is about 2 times the Earth's diameter. It's 60 light years away, and it's orbiting the star Pi Mensa, and the star is kind of like the sun, actually, very close to the sun. And now Mensa is a southern constellation. It's actually right next to Octans, the most southern constellation that actually is part of the South Pole. Okay, a constellation. It has no stars that are of any historic note, nor any stars that are brighter than the 5th magnitude. Okay, but now it's becoming a more important constellation because TESS found this planet in it. And it's a very small constellation, and it was astronomer Nicholas Louis Leakey who actually created the constellation to commemorate Table Mountain in South Africa, and Mensae is named for it. Now, the star that we're talking about here, Pi Mensae, already has a known planet around it, known as Pi Mensae B. Okay, and the one that TESS found is Pi Mensae C. Now, Pi Mensae B, the planet we already knew about, is 10 times Jupiter's mass, and is in a very, very elliptical or eccentric orbit, as we'll say, at times. And this elliptical orbit is really a very, very, very stretched out ellipse. It's amazing how elliptical it is, and that's why we found it. Anyway, this is significant because of the 2 planets found. Pi Mensae B and Pi Mensae C. The oddity of having a system where you have two planets, one of them's in a circular orbit. That's what Pi Mensae C is. It's in a circular orbit right near the star. And B is in this highly elliptical orbit, which is totally different. So the question is, how did the dynamics work to create that star system? It's really odd. And you see, these new finds always test our science all the time. So that said, there is another test find, and it's around the star with the incredibly creative name of LHS 3884. Oh, yeah. I know you won't forget that. LHS 3884b, as in boy, is the planet found around that star. And the planet is only 1.3 times the size of the Earth. It's rocky, meaning it's terrestrial. And it's 49 light years from the Earth. Now, the star, however, is a red dwarf. Now, red dwarfs, we know, are very, very cool stars. And we have our Hertzsprung-Russell diagram with the spectral or stellar classes along the bottom, which Amanda knows. And I'll put her on the spot and have her go through them. From hottest to coolest, Amanda, they are?
OBAFGKM.
Absolutely correct.
Oh, I did. You cut out for a second. I'm like, is that not what I was supposed to say? Did I get confused? Okay.
No.
I said it right? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, OBAFGKM. And you,
okay.
you cut out too, incidentally, at the same time, which is weird. Anyway.
Oh, okay. So I was going to say, you didn't say anything after. I'm like, oh, no. What did I mess up?
That's okay. Well, look, it's not as bad as the last time there was silence from me during this, right at the start of the show, when I had accidentally pressed the mute button and then forgot to unmute myself. Now, that's pretty embarrassing, don't you think?
No, well, that's what I did. First I checked, okay, I unmuted. I said the letters. I said them in order. I'm double checking. I'm like, he's not saying anything. Oh, my God, panic mode.
No, you got it completely correct. And I say to everybody out there, Amanda didn't know any astronomy when we started Sky Tour live stream, which was the observatory deep sky sessions, and she consented to be the co-host for Sky Tour live stream. And as we've moved along with folks like Daryl, who joins us now and then on our show, he's a friend of the show, a friend of both of us outside the show. She's actually amassed quite a knowledge of astronomy. She knows more than she thinks she knows. And so we're not going to put you to the test or anything like that, Amanda. That certainly wouldn't be fair. I'll ask you only the things I know, because I don't want you to feel on the spot or anything, because who wants that, Besides, this is...
It's not even that. I mean, if it was just a chat, that would be fine, but no one wants to tune in and listen to me think. And I always have to think my way through something, because when I answer spontaneously, then I realize, okay, that didn't even make any sense. But I'm working on it, and with the continued support of the chat and your guidance, I think I might pick up another thing or two yet.
I think you will. I think you're doing okay so far.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we were talking about now this star LHS 3884, around which we have this planet that's 1.3 times Earth's size. And we said the star is a red dwarf. Well, that means the star is very small. It's actually 1/5 of the size of the sun. Okay, now the sun is 865,000 miles across. So just go into your calculators and do 1/5 of that. Divide that by 5. And that's the diameter of this planet. I'm sorry, this star, right? And I almost want to say planet, don't I? Because it's like, it's crazy because, we're looking at something that big. And when we actually decide, if we say, well, I guess that means that there's now a 173,000 mile diameter star out there. Well, it's kind of not fully unreasonable to think of that as a possible planet. It's a very large planet, so, and in this universe, anything goes now, it seems. We actually found a star smaller than the planet Jupiter. Yet people say, but Jupiter has to be 80 times the size to be a star. It's not 80 times the size, it's 80 times the mass. So it means that the planet will be far more dense at the same size, okay, to actually become a star, it would have to actually have 80 times the mass of Jupiter, all right, to actually be something other than just a brown dwarf, which is what we've traditionally been told is a failed star, okay? So a failed star would require a lot more mass to become a true star. And we're going to actually talk about what happens in a star tonight. We're actually going to go through that. It's going to be a interesting foray as we learn about the Orion Nebula, in fact, as we go through this. But we're going to get there a little bit later. Now, the one thing I wanted to mention, too, about that small star is it means that the planets, for them to be in a habitable zone, they're going to be very close to the star. All right. However, in this particular case, we don't see any habitable planetary bodies yet. And so we're just reporting the fact that TESS, only launched several months ago, has already been on the job and found over 280 of them that have to be confirmed, of course, and 3 that have been confirmed. Confirmation is slow. And why is that? When we find a planet around a star, we have to say, in that sentence I just said, when we find a planet around a star, is almost like a sentence that doesn't belong. And the reason is because if we find something that looks like a planet around a star, we have to figure out if it was a planet around the star. Because stars also have sunspots, star spots, like our sun has sunspots. And what do they do to the light of the star? Well, they dim the light of the star, and it takes if the star is rotating at a certain rate, then it'll look like the planet is crossing the star at a certain rate, which is actually probably feasible and probably proper for some planets. So we have to wait, you see, for that star to rotate around again to see if the star spot has gone away. Why?
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. We'll finish your thoughts. I have a question, and if I'm off base, you can tell me where I'm going wrong.
Okay, no, that's fine. So if we wait for the star to rotate, because all stars rotate, all right, their angular momentum is based on when they were first created, that momentum begins, and as the star's rotating, if it rotates around again and that spot that caused the light to dim the first time is not there, then we know that we didn't see a planet, because the planets irrevocably go around and around and around, and we get a repeating periodic dimming of the light. But this works for planets that are very close. What about planets that are very far away from the star? If it happens to transit, we might see a transiting planet go across the front of the star, as seen from here. But if it takes 112 years for that planet to go around its star, we're not going to see it anytime soon. It'll always be a candidate for the next 112 years until some future project discovers it through a different method or confirms that it has gone around again. See? So this is a lot going on here. Okay, go ahead, Amanda. You had a question.
Okay, and I'm debating asking it now. I have a feeling I'm getting something confused. You said sunspots? As the star's rotating, the star spots would cause dimming?
Yeah, and if on our sun we have magnetic storms, and they show up as a cooler area on the sun. They look like little spots on the sun. Those spots are an area where less light is coming out of them because they're taking up some of the surface of the sun. So the sun's light is dimmed, imperceptibly so, but still dimmed by the fact that these sunspots are moving around our star. So there are some sunspot groups that were huge in history. I mean, massive sunspot groups on the sun at some points in the past. These spots would certainly look like a transiting planet because they would dim the light of the star as seen from a great distance. We don't know what's causing the dimming. We just calculate, it was dimming, and it dimmed for 27 days. Okay, wow, okay. Or 12 days or 15 days. So we then say, okay, let's make this a planetary candidate and say it was dimming for 12 or 15 days. That means that we can calculate its distance, approximate distance from the star based on its speed across the disk. We know how fast it has to move in its orbit and so we can figure a rough distance from the star, and from that we can then project when we'll see it again. So when you go back into where it's supposed to come through again, and you don't see it, then you know that it was one of these star spots, these geomagnetic storms on the surface of that star. And those storms don't last, years. They last a couple of months, sometimes weeks, and sometimes days. Right? So they're transient. They're short-lived. And that's why it takes so long to confirm planets. We have to go through all of the different approaches, and you use different methodologies to confirm that planets are around stars. So that said, I think that we're definitely leapfrogging Kepler and the K2 re-engineered Kepler mission with TESS. Now, TESS is again, it's an amazing system. We're going to talk about it here at the end, but let me tell you, I'm pretty happy with the results of TESS so far. And this planet we're talking about around the red dwarf, it's 1/5 that star's only 1/5 the size of our sun, and it's in the constellation of Indus, actually, INDUS, and at 49 light years away, it's probably one of the closest planets we've and that's sort of a small and unique club in that regard. How far are they from us, and are they transiting? But don't get too excited about visiting it, okay? Because it orbits the star in only 11 hours. And its daytime side is likely molten. And the planet is, of course, most likely tidally locked, meaning only one face of the planet faces the star. Like the moon has only one face that faces us, that tidal locking is based on gravitational forces and so forth. Anyway, the third planet found by TESS is a confirmed find known as HD 21749b. And I wonder if Amanda remembers, maybe not, what the HD stands for in terms of the star catalogs we talked about. And the star is HD 21749.
Is it Henry Draper?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yay! What's the other one? It's not Urgus. What's the other one?
Gliese.
Gliese.
Well, Gliese.
And the double S is symbol.
Yes, and in fact, if you look at, there's a lot of catalogs, a lot of star catalogs. I mean,
yeah, but I only know like 3 of them, so.
I know.
And I know the new general catalog.
That's for deep space. Yeah, that's right. That's for galaxies and clusters of stars. Oh. Okay. There's other star catalogs that are really from many, like almost a century ago. When I was getting my degree, I actually used one called the Bonner-Dirk-Merstering. Okay, and that the BD catalog. So you see stars with BD, as in beta decay, BD, in their name.
Is that what it stands for?
No. That's just so you can know what letters I'm saying, because you might not. Is it B or is it a P? Or is it D or an E? That kind of thing. Yeah. So there's been a lot of catalogs out there, of stars for sure. But I know that we're definitely able to classify stars differently these days. And finding planets now, like TESS has found these, it's amazing. TESS found this one, okay, and it's HD 21749b, as in boy, B, and that's that's a planet that's about 3 times the size of the Earth, but it's 23 times the Earth's mass, so it's very dense. It orbits the star every 36 days, and its surface temperature is like about 300 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 150 Celsius. It's a greater density than the planet Neptune, but it's not a rocky planet, so it's probably one of these weird, I don't know what to say, kind of like a weird blend of puffy, semi-rocky planets. Okay, now all this we can tell from scanning a swath of sky from the TESS cameras. All right, and the TESS cameras, there's 4 of them. They scan a size of the sky that's 24 by 96 degrees in size, all at once. And this is what's giving us this information. If you recall, Kepler and the subsequent K2 mission, they were like, in a sense, they were kind of like a pencil point, okay, analyzing a star, one specific star. TESS is looking at all the stars in its cameras at the same time. So it's really yielding some fantastic results. So I just say, go TESS, go TESS, you know? So I think that's pretty cool. Now, I don't remember if you had any other questions, Amanda. I wasn't sure if you did. We've got about a minute left here, and I just wanted to, before the break, I just want to see if you had anything, or if the chat had something.
Nothing from chat as of yet, but I'm really glad you explained it like you did, because that's what I thought. I was thinking, like, I just had a feeling I was getting confused, because when you were saying the star spots cause the dimming, I was thinking, the first thing I thought of is, wouldn't that be confusing? If it's a planet passing, how would you know the difference? And you said that's the whole problem, why it takes so long to confirm. So I feel better about that, but is that what the holdup with Tabby Star was? They had to kind of scratch off all the possibilities to figure out what it is, because we never had resolution for that yet, did we?
We still don't. And the problem with that is that you got to have like a program, has to be, given Tabby Star as a program star to look at. And, wherever Tabby Star is located, for instance, it might be a problem. We actually looked at Tabby Star in SkyTour live stream. We saw it.
Yeah, but I didn't realize that star spots would cause dimming, right? I always assumed something is passing by. We just don't know what it is.
I know. And you know what else we can't let pass by?
Break?
Yeah, unfortunately. Hey, folks, we'll be right back with SkyTour Radio here. I'm Mark D'Antonio, and my wonderful effervescent co-host, of course, is Amanda Curran. We look forward to seeing you back in just a few moments. So see you then. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to SkyTour Radio. I'm Mark D'Antonio with Amanda Curran. She's still there in the background, right, Amanda? I still hear you. Yeah. You there?
Maybe.
Yeah, that means yes. Well, anyway, I want to welcome you all back, the greatest listeners on earth, to KGRAradio.com, where SkyTour Radio takes you on a foray of the deep sky on a weekly basis. And thanks to your request, we are a 2-hour show now. And I'm humbled by that fact. We love doing this for you. We love doing astronomy. Amanda loves learning astronomy. I love talking about it. In fact, I don't shut up, frankly. So I realize that. And I guess that makes it good for radio. Anyway, next up here on SkyTour Radio, we talked about TESS and its discoveries. Well, we're going to leave TESS behind, let it keep doing its work. But now we're going to talk about tightening up our belts with Orion's belt. Right now, next to the Big Dipper, which is a pattern of stars within the constellation of Ursa Major, the Great Bear, is the next most recognizable pattern of stars in the sky, and it's in the constellation of Orion. Orion is set apart by this belt of 3 bright stars, and those stars are well, they're powerhouses in their own right. Okay, I mean true powerhouses. And last week we discussed the outer stars in Orion that frame the belt. In the top left we had Betelgeuse, this red giant. The top right we had Bellatrix, another bright hot star. The bottom left we had Saiph, and in the lower right we had Rigel. Now these frame the belt of 3 stars, which themselves sit above the dagger of Orion in mythology. I know Amanda likes the mythology, so I try to work that in.
And I appreciate it.
Yeah, she likes that stuff.
I think other people do too. I think you're the odd one out here.
I'm you know what? I'm sure you're probably correct. But the bottom line is that we sometimes identify features in a constellation by referring to the mythology, like the dagger of Orion. Well, anyone who doesn't know any astronomy is going to say, what's that, a TV show? Is that a reality show? I haven't seen the Dagger of Orion yet. Is it good? No. But the Dagger of Orion, of course, is below the belt of 3 stars in Orion. And you can see with your eye a little fuzzy thing. And that's actually one of the very brightest nebulae in the sky that we know. And it's the Orion Nebula. It's a stellar nursery where stars are born, and possibly star systems with planets. And it's famous. It's called Messier 42, named by Charles Messier, It was one of the objects he came across when he created his catalog of Messier objects. That's Messier. The Messier objects, catalog of objects not to be confused as comets. He was sort of a comet hunter. And in sort of a backwards way, he ended up putting together a catalog of all these wonderful, amazing deep sky objects that we have actually researched for a long, long time, actually hundreds of years, thanks to him in the 1600s doing this. So now looking up at the belt, we see this triple hit of hot plasma with these massive monster stars that are there. And let's sort of pick up kind of where we left off last week. And the first star, the leftmost star in the belt, is called Alnitak. Now, those of you that are in the Sky Tour live stream and you join us in the telescope on clear nights, you've seen Alnitak recently. We've talked about Alnitak. You see some of the nebulas that are associated with Alnitak. The nebula just means cloud, right? I mean, and that's really what it means. But in terms of space, it means a glowing cloud, okay, that we can see. And we're going to actually talk about how all that works tonight, too. I want to try and give you a true, definitive definition of why things look the way they do. And we're using Orion as the basis of it, including the Orion Nebula. So Alnitak is the farthest left in the belt. It's 820 light years away. That means we're seeing it as it was 820 years ago. Okay. Now, it's a type 09 all right, star. So it's a very, very hot 09.7. That's its spectral class. Okay. And when Amanda went through the OBAF GKM, you know that O's are the hottest and M's are the coolest. Well, the O's are very, very hot. And the 09.7 means that it's almost a B0, close to a B0. It's just a 0.2 away, from being there, 0.3, and so, but the thing is, it's also got another component with its spectral class, and that component is called the luminosity class. What's that? Well, that's the intrinsic brightness of the star. What's that? It's how bright the star is, but it's based on its place in evolution, what's happened to it in its evolution. So when we look at a star, okay, that is actually burning and fusing hydrogen into helium in its core, that's called a dwarf, believe it or not. And it has a particular designation. We give dwarfs a designation of Roman numeral 5, which is a V. Okay. And you can see if you look at a diagram of this spectral class across the bottom with brightness up across the left, you see that there is a main sequence, as it's called. It goes from the top left down through the center and wanders down to the lower right. The stars go from hot and blue to yellow, to white, and then to yellow, then to orange, then to red, down at the M's. Okay? Those are stars that are normal. They're fusing hydrogen into helium. Well, when they run out of hydrogen, other things happen. And this will cause them not to fuse hydrogen into helium anymore, of course. And they're now fusing helium, say, into carbon, the next going down the periodic table. Because, of course, stars are element factories. They build the elements that you are made of, which I was always crazed by that. I thought, wow, that's so amazing. I was born, my elements that make me up were born in the furnaces of a star. Tens of million, well, actually probably over 100 million degrees in temperature forge the elements that make you up. I just think that's crazy. It's amazing. So, Alnitak, being one of these very, very hot and large stars, it ran out of hydrogen a long time ago. And we'll see what we mean by a long time ago for this. All right. And it's actually a star that is designated as a Roman numeral 1, it looks like an I, and a little b, okay? It's a 1b supergiant, all right? And 1a supergiants, the Roman numeral 1, little letter a, are the next level up. So it's nearly the largest type of star that the universe has to offer in the general cadre of stars. So as a star like this, it's 20 times bigger than our sun, bigger in diameter, and it's very hot, as we know, because it's an O-type star, as we've been saying. It radiates a lot in wavelengths that you can't even see. It radiates in the ultraviolet, which is a very hot, very energetic, far into the blue and beyond the visible blue. Okay, and in this visual spectrum, just what you can see with your eyes, not even counting what it radiates in the ultraviolet, that star is 10,500 times as bright as our sun. Isn't that incredible? And in the ultraviolet, it's 90,000 times as bright as our sun. So its total luminosity, its total intrinsic brightness is 100,000 times the brightness of our sun if we include its UV component as well. So now, let's say we were going to go live around Alnitak. How far would we have to be from Alnitak so that its ultraviolet radiation and its radiation that it radiates normally in the visible spectrum would actually allow us to survive? We would actually have to be 300 times as far away from Alnitak as we are from our sun. Now, what does that mean? To survive around Alnitak, that UV and visual light powerhouse and the blue end of the spectrum, we'd have to be 28 billion miles. 28 billion miles. That's more than 40 astronomical units. Or to put it in terms that are more clear, Pluto is 3.6 billion miles away. 3.6. We'd have to be about 7.5 times Pluto's distance to have a reasonable chance to survive around Alnitak. Can you believe that? 7.5 times Pluto's distance. It took us 15 years to get to Pluto from the Earth. Okay, with the New Horizons spacecraft. 15 years.
And we'd have to be that far away to be safe?
We'd have to be 7.5 times that distance to Pluto. Beyond it, farther out, we'd be way out in the Kuiper Belt and beyond in order to be safe from Alnitak. Isn't that, it's mind-boggling when you think about it, you know? And the thing is about...
Well, would we have enough heat for it even to be habitable?
Well,
being safe and being habitable are two different things. So does that right there say it's kind of impossible to have a habitable exoplanet around there?
Well, first of all, O-type stars, you're right. In a sense, you're right. I'll tell you why. You're on the right track. We're not using Alnitak as an exoplanet study, I know, because we don't actually expect there'll ever possibly be a planet around there. There's a reason I'm saying that. As I move forward here, I'll tell you what I mean by that. Because Alnitak is actually not a very old star, which is kind of cool. Anyway, and I'll get back to that. But honestly, Alnitak in this case, okay, it's probably the brightest O star in the sky, literally in the whole sky. You know, and as I mentioned, as a supergiant star, it's already stopped converting hydrogen to helium. All right, and this is usually what we see. Like our sun has, 5 billion years under its belt. It's got, 5 billion more years before we would see it come to an end. But probably it's probably got around 3.5 billion, maybe 4 billion years before we start to see signs that it's running out of hydrogen. Alnitak has already run out of hydrogen, and it left that main sequence we talk about where normal stars exist, and it's only 8 million years old. 8 million years old. And it's already run out of hydrogen. So that's how big this star is. And it's the normal hydrogen fusion, okay? The normal hydrogen fusion with a normal star like the sun gives any planets billions of years to form, billions of years for life to come about, if at all. So an 8 million year old star, this powerful, that's throwing off most of its energy in the ultraviolet, has most likely sterilized anything around it. And more than that, it's probably blown all of the, and a great deal actually, of the gas and dust away from it with its stellar wind. And what is stellar wind? Well, stellar wind is actually high energy radiation and then particles that are actually coming from the star. And what are those? Well, a star basically on its surface has this hot plasma. And what is that? Well, it's protons and electrons, right? And plasma is merely, it's too hot to bake into it to allow an atom to form. So it basically strips the electrons off of an atom, leaving only the protons. So plasma, depending on where you go in the plasma, can have a different charge, but it's going to all be charged particles racing off the star. And they will interact with any planetary formation. They will interact with any atmosphere, and they will just rip it clean if it's highly energetic and ultraviolet frequencies. So, and frequency and wavelength, think of them as the same thing for now. It's okay. We're not going to differentiate tonight, but I can tell you that Alnitak, being so hot, all right, has left. It's only 8 million years old. Has already finished using its hydrogen. So now that means what? Well, it means that Alnitak is going to end up burning and fusing other elements, and it can't get to beyond iron, number 26 in the periodic table. And when that happens, a few things can happen. Alnitak can no longer fuse anything beyond iron, as no star can. And then when it runs out of whatever it's fusing at the time, it could be fusing silicon into something beyond. It could be fusing carbon into hydrogen and oxygen. It could be making, neon, in different shells. Believe it or not, when it gets to the iron, it can't go beyond that because it takes more energy to fuse iron into something else. And so it's like trying to walk over the top of a very tall hill, and you just can't ever make it over the top of the hill. Well, that hill is iron fusion, okay? So what will happen is the process will stop when it runs out of its final fuel, and the star will collapse on itself. And that catastrophic collapse will cause a catastrophic explosion known as a supernova. Now, to complicate matters, Alnitak isn't just one star. We've seen this before. On SkyTour Livestream, we often go visit stars that are have multiple components. We call them double stars or triple stars. There's even some quaternary systems where there's 4 stars. Well, Alnitak is a triple star. There's 3 components, including the main star itself. And note, we talk about double and triple stars by referring to their names and their components. Similar to exoplanet naming, okay, the main star is a capital letter and the orbiting component is like a small lowercase letter. So Alnitak is also, in terms of its brightness, it's Zeta Orionis, all right? So Zeta Orionis, or Alnitak, capital A, little b. So capital A means the main star, the primary. Little b is a little star, another star that's actually orbiting it, okay? And that star, I say little star that's orbiting it, it's actually a B2 star, so it's still very hot, and that's its spectral class, but its luminosity class, right, is 3, Roman numeral 3. And what's that? Well, it's a giant, okay? Those are known as giants, so it's a giant star. So it's anything but little, right? It's a giant in its own right, and if it was just a little farther from Alnitak, all right, or what we know as Zeta Orionis, okay, we'd actually see it with our eye in the sky, but it's too close, so we can't, all right? So, and just that component, that B2 Roman numeral 3 spectral type star that is a companion to Alnitak, just that star is 1,300 times brighter than our sun, all right? So it's also possible there's another late type O star. Alnitak is considered a late O type because it's O 9.7. Remember the O 0 through 9, okay? And when you get to 9.7, you go to 10. Well, that's the next spectral type, so B0, okay? But another late O type star near it is possible, and it's only 11 astronomical units from the star. 11. Well, I mean, come on, that's crazy. That's very close to the star, considering Neptune is 30 astronomical units out, right? You know, and this is basically, just a third of the way in our solar system, and that's how far away this other star is, and it's another O. We're talking about stars that are, when they go, they're going to go. And who knows, maybe this star will be caught up in an explosion when the primary Alnitak goes off. Holy cow, that would be amazing, But, for farther components that are farther away from a star, we use a different designation. And it can be pretty confusing sometimes. So whereas Alnitak, or more formally Zeta Orionis, capital A, little a, okay, is the main star. The very close companion is Zeta Orionis, capital A, little b. All right. But there is a third star in this triple system, and that third component is designated as Zeta Orionis, capital B, which, you would think, well, wait, why isn't it capital A, little c?
That was my guess.
Yes, that's what you'd want to know, why it's not that and why it's Zeta Orionis, capital B. Well, it has to do with the distance from the star, and it's truly truly has to do with the way the components are interacting with each other. Okay, so I think that it probably needs some revision, frankly, but it comes from historical analysis and so forth. And just like with exoplanet systems, if we find an exoplanet around a star, it's given the designation, say, of little b. Okay, but then what if we find another one, that's actually closer to the star? Well, I guess that's going to be C. So you can have, components that are seemingly mismatched in their nomenclature, even though in order of discovery is how they're labeled. Okay. But still, it's pretty strange. Now, this Zeta Orionis, capital B, is a blue-white giant, and of course, it is actually of spectral class B anyway. And those of you that follow SkyTour livestream, Alnitak, we've talked about, because it's responsible for lighting up the Flame Nebula. All right, and it causes it to glow as it does. Now, we've imaged the Flame Nebula in SkyTour livestream. We've seen it. Actually, just most recently, we've seen it. It's truly a monster system here of 3 massive stars, and they're all destined to explode in cataclysmic supernovae, at some time, just a few million years from now. I mean, isn't that incredible? Now, the middle star in the belt is called Alnilam, Alnilam, Alnilam. So it's Alnitak, Alnilam, and Mintaka. This is the last one. But Alnilam, if you thought Alnitak was huge, and it is, Alnilam continues this trend. It's in the middle of the belt, okay? And it's actually, as the middle star in the belt, it's a B0, so very hot, just past the O's. Roman numeral 1A, so it's one of the biggest it can be. Are you ready for this? 63,500 times the sun's brightness. And that's just in the visible light spectrum. In the ultraviolet, it adds, are you ready for this? It adds 560,000 times the brightness of the sun into the mix. Literally. So we're talking about something that's well over 600,000 times brighter than our sun overall when it's total output. Now, okay, that would be a deadly location for us, even if we were as far away as Pluto. And even at that safe distance, 7.5 times from Pluto, further than Pluto, that Alnitak, we could survive at Alnitak. Alnilam, no chance. It's huge. It's a type 1A supergiant. It's just amazing. If you put it in the sun's location, it would reach out to Mercury. It's 38 times the sun's diameter. It's 40 times the sun's mass. It's 1,400 light years away. It's actually the farthest away of the 3 belt stars, but are you ready for this? It's the brightest of them. And it's only 4 million years old. It ran out of hydrogen a long time ago, and it's only 4 million years old. Now, what's that mean? It means, think about this now. This is the stuff that keeps me up. That star appeared in the sky around the time that Lucy, Australopithecus afarensis, the earliest of our ancestors, wandered out into the savannah for the first time. That's when that star appeared in the sky, and no one saw it happen. That created the middle star in the belt. Boom! It wasn't there, then it was. Now, before that time, Orion was made up of fewer stars than we actually see today. You know, and I see we have some questions coming in, but we'll get to that in just a minute. You know, now I want to talk about the final star, the right-hand star in the belt. That's called Mintaka, Mintaka. It's an O9.5, and that's the spectral class. But the luminosity class is Roman numeral 2. And on the Hertzsprung-Russell diagram, I don't know, Amanda, if you still have the HR diagram that I sent you to put up last time, but that would help people probably to see that if you have it. If you don't, it's okay.
I can get it. I have it somewhere.
Okay, because I'm sorry, I didn't
no problem.
give it to you before.
I threw up a few pictures already.
Oh, very cool. So Mintaka A, the brightest one, is actually that 09.52 Roman numeral 2 bright giant. Then there's a Mintaka B, capital B, all right? And it's a small star that may or may not be bound to the other two. And then there's Mintaka C, capital C. It's a well-known component that we know is part of that triple star system. Okay, it's a B-class star. It's actually larger than the O star, the O9.5. Okay, and Mintaka overall is 70,000 brighter than the sun, and it's only 3 million years old. So if you think about it, our ancestor Lucy, 4.2 million years ago, would have noticed that Orion only had, if Lucy looked up, would notice perhaps that Orion only had one star in the belt, and then maybe one day a second star appeared. See, and she would then never see that a third star was in the belt. Interesting, isn't it? Absolutely crazy. So that's the historical nature of this. You know, when you put it in terms of Earth history, then the universe and the scale of the universe, the time frame of the universe, takes on a whole new light. You know, so now in terms of questions, I see we got a couple of questions here, and I'm trying to remember. I don't know where Lorelei questions. She says, "How will this affect the expanding universe?" And I'm trying to figure out at what point she asked that. So, because I don't think that it's affecting our expanding universe. I don't think anything I've mentioned affects our expanding universe.
No, I'm not sure exactly what part she was referring to. I think it was when you were talking about the distance being further than Pluto with the, was it UV?
Yeah, the
IV, right? Yeah, the UV rays. I don't know if that's where she was going with the expanding UV rays. If the universe is expanding as a whole, is that going to eventually affect other things near it? But that's just a guess. Once the stars go supernova, is what you just said in chat.
Oh, okay. Well, you know what? I think that we would be subject to a supernova here if we didn't take our break. But we're going to go to our break right now. And when we come back, I'm going to answer her question about expanding universe and supernovae. All right, so stick with us, folks. This is Sky Tour Radio. I'm Mark D'Antonio with Amanda Curran. We'll be right back. Hey, welcome back to Sky Tour Radio here on KGRAradio.com. I'm Mark D'Antonio with Amanda Curran, and we are taking you through the Orion's Belt tonight. We did that already, and now we're going to dig down. I actually just touch upon one more point. We mentioned that the three belt stars of Orion weren't always there, and that one of the stars is only 4 million years old, and that was, of course, Alnilam, and that's the middle star in the belt of three stars. And it appeared in the sky around the time that our ancestor Lucy, Australopithecus afarensis, as I said, was in the savannah and first looking up in the sky. Who knows if Lucy looked up at the sky and said, "Ooh, what are those dots in the sky?" Who knows? Most likely it was more like, is that a threat? Is that a threat? Is that a threat? Okay. But, Orion only had 2 stars in the belt when Lucy was wandering the savannah. And then the final star, Mintaka, that's 3 million years old. So when we look at that and we see that Mintaka wasn't even there. So Orion only had 2 belt stars for Lucy and a million years worth of her ancestors. So I think that's pretty 800,000 years worth of her ancestors. So I think that's pretty cool, And down below the belt, whether 2 or 3 stars, the Orion Nebula has always been there. And Orion is a stellar nursery. The Orion Nebula is a stellar nursery, and the entire Orion region is part of something called the Orion Molecular Cloud Complex, the OMC. Okay, the Orion Molecular Cloud Complex. And what is a molecular cloud when we talk about this in terms of space? Well, how do molecules form in space? Well, molecules can form in space, all right? And a molecule can form from a element that is prevalent. And the most prevalent element in space is hydrogen gas, hydrogen atoms. And these hydrogen atoms can actually bond and become H2, okay? So diatomic hydrogen, 2 atoms of hydrogen linked together, bonded together to make a molecule. And so the Orion molecular cloud is composed of a lot of that. It's also composed of singular atoms of hydrogen for sure, and atoms of a lot of other materials in the periodic table, atoms that come from other stars that went supernova previously and spewed their wonderful elementary components into the heavens. And those became part of new stars that were formed. And when we look at our sun, for instance, our sun cannot make calcium in its core. It can't fuse calcium. It can't create, calcium. Can't create magnesium. It can't create iron. It's not massive enough to even create it. So there's a lot of, elements that our sun cannot create. And in fact, it can only do pretty much helium, and it can make helium, helium-4, as we'll see shortly. And it can't make anything far beyond that. It can make some carbon possibly. All right. But that is the limit for our star. Yet in the star's atmosphere, our sun's atmosphere, we see a wealth of lines, a wealth of spectral lines indicating the presence of many elements that the sun can't possibly make. How did that happen? The answer is that it was formed with them. The gas and dust that were in our solar nebula before the sun formed had a lot of these elements in it. And as the sun picked these elements up, okay, certainly gravity doesn't distinguish between dust and gas. But what is dust? Dust is little tiny micron-sized particles of many atoms. So as the solar nebula heated up and the proto-star that became the sun got hotter and hotter and hotter, the dust was broken down into its constituent elements and ended up with silicon, ended up with calcium, ended up with magnesium and other elements that we see in our sun spectrum. All right, and that's part of the process of stellar formation. So how does it actually work? Well, if you have a lot of gas in this dust present, like I talked about, then you're going to have potentially local gravitational infall of particles, meaning a cloud might form of a mass concentration. All right? We know the universe is clumpy, has clumps, and we know that we have areas that are more dense and less dense, and that local gravitational collapse that occurs in maybe a cloud is the thing that can become what would eventually be a solar nebula-like thing like we had here. And so these areas of mass concentration will grow larger and accrete more and more mass onto them. And as the mass increases, the heat at the center rises, as does the pressure on the center. And now that mass will increase perhaps until temperatures are in excess of 13 million kelvins, which is 23 million degrees Fahrenheit, by the way, and 12.9 million degrees Celsius. And when that happens, the hydrogen in the center of the cloud begins a process that without which we would never exist. That process is hydrogen fusion. So if I could play music right now, I'd play some little campy music going, dun, 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 let's talk hydrogen fusion, and do that. And that's actually kind of fun, because when we talk about temperatures reaching 13 million K, 23 million Fahrenheit, in this collapsing cloud of gas, fusion begins in earnest. Now, at 10 million Kelvin, it can happen too, but it's not considered a dominant process. Some fusion will occur, but it's not dominant until 13 million Kelvin, 23 million Fahrenheit. All right. Now, what is fusion? Well, fusion is the pressing together of atomic nuclei under high pressure and high temperature to create a new element. Note we mentioned nuclei and not atoms. Why is that? At fusion temperatures, the electrons that typically are part of an atom, along with the protons, they're not bound to any atomic nuclei at those temperatures, because at those high temperatures, they're free to move around because they are ejected from the atom. And now we just have freely moving protons and freely moving electrons. Plasma. Okay. And this is important because, they're highly important because their presence, the electron's presence as a negative charge amongst the positive proton charges. As you remember from your high school chemistry, protons are positive, electrons are negative, neutrons are neutral. Okay. Well, the electron's presence in this plasma among the positive charges basically helps keep the plasma as a whole neutral. Okay. And by the way, that seething mass of high temperature protons and electrons, it truly is what we call plasma. Plasma requires very high temperatures, all right, and you cannot have plasma without these exceedingly high temperatures, all right, in stars. Now, just a little side note. As the Mutual UFO Network's chief photo and video analyst, I get UFO cases where people say, it was right over my head and surrounded by a glowing plasma sphere, for instance. I hear that, actually, and people say that because they don't know what to make of what they see. Well, they don't like hearing that it actually cannot possibly be true. And it's because the word plasma seems to be a buzzword in the UFO community that implies something about the nature of the object you're looking at. In fact, it shows just the opposite, unfortunately. It shows that you don't, because you wouldn't possibly make the mistake of calling it plasma, because you don't know what plasma is, basically. If it was surrounded by something, it certainly wasn't plasma, not in the sense that we understand it. If it was plasma, it'd be at a minimum temperature of several tens of thousands of degrees, and it would most assuredly sear you into bacon before you could take a breath, and it would also superheat the air for a huge distance around it. So it's not plasma. Just saying. That's a little aside there. But in stars, though, those temperatures are routine. And this is the prime real estate where deep within such places fusion can occur. And there's a couple ways in which fusion can occur, and there's variations on the two methods overall. One's called the proton-proton method. The other one is called the CNO cycle. But we're only going to look at the way stars like the sun operate, okay? Because those are where we're going, all right? Because when stars form, that's typically a first start, and so we're going to talk about those. Now we care about that first reaction. That 13 million Kelvin threshold is reached. Okay, at that point, when hydrogen can fuse in earnest and become a dominant process, okay, we call it the proton-proton chain reaction. Okay, now that's what we call it. But the fact is, it's actually not even a chain reaction. And just like astronomers who love their acronyms to throw all these acronyms at you, put the BDU and the F56 and fight, and they get the AC thing going. It's like, what the heck did he just say? Well, just like we love our acronyms, sometimes things are named, kind of in a way that everyone who understands it knows what it means, but people on the outside don't know, and it becomes crazy. So fusion, the primary mechanism creating fusion is something called the proton-proton, right? And it's not a chain reaction though, like lighting paper on a fire that spreads on the paper as it's burning. It's actually the result of decay of unstable atomic isotopes. Whoa, what's that mean? I'll tell you about that in a minute. Okay, so these unstable isotopes then are really what create this so-called chain reaction. All right. Now that's sort of a simple explanation, and you're probably saying, what? Well, trust me, I think you'll understand a little bit more as we move forward. All right. A little more detail, though, is appropriate, so you can actually see how it works. So in a protostar, in a star, a cloud that's collapsing, gravitationally collapsing, and there's a lot of mass in this cloud, and where the temperature reaches that 13 million Kelvin threshold, two hydrogen atoms can come together, and overall, they will then create a helium, all right? Now, how does that happen? Well, I'm going to tell you, because there's a lot going on that makes a difference to how we look at this moving forward. Two atoms of hydrogen can come together and form what is called a deuterium atom. What's deuterium? Well, deuterium is a variation of the hydrogen atom where the nucleus contains another neutron. And the proton, typically found in a hydrogen atom, is there too. So a deuterium atom has, a deuterium nucleus, okay, because electrons are free under this high pressure and temperature. A deuterium nucleus has a proton and a neutron in it, and that's it. Now, when we add a neutron to an atom's nucleus, any atom that is, we get something called an isotope. And what does that mean? It's just a variation of the original nucleus, or the original atom if it's an atom, okay? It's a variation of the original. So it's still a hydrogen, but it's an isotope. It's a different variation, a different flavor of hydrogen. So neutrons, they don't have any charge. They are neutral, hence their name, neutrons, right? Not Jimmy Neutrons, okay, but just neutrons, Neutrons. So they just add mass to the atomic mass of the nucleus in the end. So two hydrogen atoms crush together to form deuterium, okay? But wait, didn't we say that the hydrogen nuclei are one proton and one proton crushing together? So you ask, well, wait a minute, how did the neutron get in there? What happened there? Well, where's the other proton? What happened to the other proton that we're talking about? We had these two hydrogen atoms coming together, or hydrogen nuclei crushing together, and the two protons crushed together, and now you're saying we have a deuterium where we have a proton and a neutron. What happened? Where's the other proton? Something happened here. What really happens under the covers is this. The two hydrogen nuclei, the two protons, crush together and form an intermediate unstable isotope of helium. Yeah, I know you're all wondering. It's called a diproton, diproton. And diprotons have two protons in the nucleus. That's it. Nothing else. Now, don't worry about the name, because diprotons don't even last long. They quickly decay into deuterium. Aha! So that's where the deuterium comes from, and a couple of other particles. So that's how the two hydrogen nuclei ultimately come together to make a deuterium nucleus. Okay? And deuterium is one proton, one neutron. All right. So now that deuterium atom has been made, that's the first step in the proton-proton chain here. That's the first step. Now we're in an environment where there's lots and lots of other hydrogen gas and lots of other deuterium nuclei out there, and hydrogen nuclei. So what happens is another hydrogen, which is available, another hydrogen nucleus combines with the deuterium nucleus, and they form another isotope called helium-3. Now, you've heard of helium-3. We have a lot of it in the moon's lunar surface. Okay, so we know that helium-3 will stick around for a while. It's a little bit more stable, clearly. So what is helium-3? Well, it's 2 protons and 1 neutron. Okay, 2 protons plus 1 proton equals 3, so thus the helium-3. Now, this reaction is occurring all throughout the star. So that means that there's more helium-3 being produced elsewhere in the star, all right? So we have the hydrogen making deuterium, and then we have the deuterium and another hydrogen forming this helium-3. And now the helium-3 combines with another helium-3. And guess what they form? They form 2 more hydrogen nuclei all over again and 1 helium-4 isotope of helium. And that's the end result of the proton-proton chain. So that is the final helium that's produced when the original 2 hydrogens get crushed together. It's amazing how much detail is in between. And I'm only glossing over the surface. There's so much else going on, and I'm not going to literally blow up your brains with that, because that would just be painful. So hydrogen is transformed to the hydrogen isotope deuterium, and in the end, it makes the hydrogen-4. So hydrogen makes helium. That's where we get the concept of fusion from making hydrogen into helium. All right. So now, if the star was more massive, then a few other things happen. Okay. And remember, we're talking about all of this stuff because we're talking about the stellar nursery, the Orion Nebula, what's going on there. And there's lots of hydrogen gas there. So this process we're talking about is occurring there. All right. Now, if the star was more massive, then temperatures could increase even more. And that would result in variations on this proton-proton. That is the way the star makes hydrogen into helium. There's variations on the way it works. And like I said, I'm not going to blow up your brains with that. But there's the proton-proton Roman numeral 1. There's PP Roman numeral 2 and PP Roman numeral 3. And then all comes into play with that come into a star that a star has in its core. So what it does to create fusion depends on its initial mass and thus the temperature in the core. So this is what leads to the formation of stars in nebulae like the Orion Nebula, known as Messier 42, in that wonderful dagger of Orion below Alnilam and Mintaka, the belt stars. Now, knowing all of that, let's consider what happens with these extremely energetic young stars formed in these nebula. Okay, they're radiating a lot of very high energy generated by every step of the fusion process in their cores. Okay, that radiation is coming out and it's going out into the interstellar medium around them, and some of the light lights up dust in the nebulae, and we see that as a reflection in the blue part of the spectrum because they're typically blue hot stars. Okay. And then something else happens too. As this high energy radiation pushes away from the star and rushes away, it encounters other atoms, and I mean atoms that have all of their electrons out there, since they're not bound up in stars and haven't had their electrons stripped away and turned into plasma by this incredible energy. And what happens is the high energy radiation causes the electrons to jump to higher energy states in the atoms of hydrogen in particular. Now, that means that they absorb the radiation that's incoming from these new stars. And as they do, they just like when you look at heating up a container full of air, as you heat up the container full of air, okay, the molecules inside start moving faster. We basically say the entropy increases, the disorder, and as it cools, it's less entropy and it's more ordered, and it's less ordered when it's hotter. So as these electrons jump off of the atom, okay, this again leaves a proton in the center of the nucleus with a free electron, and the proton and nucleus is +1 charge, as I said. And that means that now we have an ionized hydrogen atom. That's what we call ionization, when the electron is pushed beyond the boundaries, that is the bounds of being bound by the proton. All right. It's absorbed a lot of energy, and so it expands, it gets larger, and next thing you know, it's unbound and not even feeling any kind of attraction to a proton at that point. So for the time being, these electrons are now unbound, and we have an ionized hydrogen atom. Okay, so far so good. Hydrogen now is what we call a positive ion. It has a +1 charge because it has only a proton in it. Now, then something else happens. When that electron jumps off of the atom, it undergoes collisions with other particles outside the atom, and it reduces its energy every time it hits another particle. And when it does that, it no longer has the energy required to stay outside of the atom, and so it begins to come back into the atom. It becomes a bound, it enters into a bound state again with the proton. So as it does that, all right, it actually is dropping energy levels to re-enter the atom. And the way it works is that there are discrete and very well-known energy states for an electron in a hydrogen atom, for instance. These are known as N numbers, N as in November. These are known as N numbers or quantum numbers, right? The hydrogen atom has a number of these discrete levels. And incidentally, since electrons have these specific and discrete energy levels, they're called quantized levels, right? Thus, the origin of the study of atomic structure, how they became known as quantum mechanics, all right? So now, an electron from a hydrogen atom that was ionized, leaving only a nucleus behind, will undergo collisions with other particles, thus causing it to lose some energy and drop back into the atom. That or an adjoining atom. It doesn't even have to be the same atom. The result is when it comes back in and rejoins the nucleus, that there's a change of energy. It loses energy to come back in and bind up again with the atom. As it does so, it falls into a series of discrete energy levels. This rejoining process is called recombination. We've talked about this in SkyTour Livestream as well. And it's sort of like a quantum pachinko game. If you know what pachinko is, it's a Japanese game of chance where you actually shoot ball bearings up, and these ball bearings, if they're the electrons, bounce around on little pegs, and you hope they fall into the right hole down below to win big. Okay, it's sort of a interesting game, but if in a way, we're looking at quantum pachinko. Okay, now the electrons that drop into what is called the third energy level in a hydrogen atom may cascade further to the second energy level, which is closer to the nucleus. All right. This particular transition happens about half the time. So in the quantum pachinko game, we're talking about something that is really really stacked in favor of this particular transition, and so it actually causes an emission of light as it drops. And the movement of the electrons from one N level, and one of those energy levels, to a lower one is characterized by this emission of a very characteristic color of light. And when they go from the N equals 3, energy state in a hydrogen atom to the lower one, okay, and cascades down to N equals 2, that particular light, that cascade creates electrons, or the electrons create light that is in the red end of the spectrum. It's a specific atomic transition for gaseous hydrogen. It's always the same amount of energy emitted as light, and as such, it's always in the same place in the spectrum. Now, we measure a spectrum knowing where a line, such as an emission line, will show up, okay? And that position is measured in a unit we call nanometers. And it's the reason it's so small is because the wavelength of light is tiny, all right? So in the case of this red colored emitted light from the recombination of an electron going back into the atom, first stopping at energy level 3 and then dropping to energy level 2, that transition from 3 to 2 makes what's called the hydrogen alpha transition. That is the red color we see in the nebula. The measured position is always 656 nanometers, 656 billionths of a meter, okay, in the wavelength of light. And we measure one wavelength of light, in this way. It's really small. Ocean waves can be many feet across from crest to crest. Sound can be a few feet to a few inches in size. And light, crest to crest, is extremely small. So that's kind of how this stuff works. That's how we get this transition, and how come nebulae are red. It's pretty cool, you know. And that's there's more to that, which we'll talk about after the break. But these transitions down to level 2 in this hydrogen atom, that's a special place. Okay, those transitions are a special place. Going to level 2, from anywhere above level 2 down to level 2, that creates a special series in the hydrogen atom that people know. It's called the Balmer series, Balmer, the Balmer series. And so we'll talk about the Balmer series. That's where hydrogen alpha lives and more. So it's kind of cool. We're teaching about the hydrogen atom tonight because the Orion Nebula basically is a hydrogen repository. And this is all going on right in front of your face when you're looking at the Orion Nebula. And right now, what will be going on in front of your face is, besides the glazed look on your eyes, will be you searching for a drink or searching for something to snack on while we go to a break. And we'll be back to Sky Tour Radio right after this. Hey everybody, welcome back to Sky Tour Radio. I'm Mark D'Antonio with Amanda Curran here on this wonderful February 17th evening. We were talking before the break, we were talking about how any transitions of an electron down to the level 2 in a hydrogen atom, this energy level state of 2, constitutes a specific set of transitions that are well known called the Balmer series. Then we know that the hydrogen alpha line is from energy level 3 down to 2. So is there a hydrogen beta? Well, yes, there is. All right. And these lines are identified with Greek letters too. So hydrogen alpha appears at 656 nanometers. In the beta is appearing at 486 nanometers. And that corresponds to a transition from this n number, this quantum number of 4, down to 2. So energy state of 4 down to energy state of 2. Okay, so dropping from one level 3 to 2, that's alpha. Dropping from 2 levels, 4 to 2, that's beta. Gamma is dropping 3 levels from 5 to 2. And that's it. That produces a line that you can see at 434 nanometers. And it goes on and on and on for the rest of the Balmer series. The common thread here is that all members of this Balmer series terminate at the energy level known as 2. So they all terminate at n equals 2 in a hydrogen atom. And there are other series, which we won't go into, but there are series like the Lyman series. Okay. And these are different transitions to different energy states. Now, what does this have to do with these emission nebula and reflection nebula and so forth? Well, reflection nebula, not a whole lot. Emission nebula, it's the very basis of their existence. You know, emission nebulae are the result of that transition of the Balmer series, within the Balmer series, of an electron recombining with the atom and dropping into energy state 3 for a period of time, and then cascading to level 2. Now, that seems like should be pretty rare, but in fact, just like a stacked, cosmic pachinko game, okay, that transition from level 3 to level 2 happens just about half the time, whereas the others happen a fraction of a percent of the time. They happen about half the time. So the overall result is that the nebulae will always look very, very red, and when they're emission nebulae. And hydrogen alpha is red in that part of the spectrum. So aside from emission, we also have dust that begins to come together through its mutual gravitation. And, the dust is dark since there's nothing to illuminate it. And it's seen in silhouette against brighter background parts of the Orion Nebula and others. And there's some photos online you can look up of Hubble Space Telescope photos of the Orion Nebula. You can see these beautiful dark areas. They look like spilled tar, But in fact, they're just denser dust that's out there. And in some cases, some of these areas of dust are semi-spherical, and they actually are contracting gravitationally in their centers. So maybe these will be new stars. Maybe these will be new star systems with planets. This is where they come from. And in the Orion Nebula, we can see quite a few stars that are in formation right now as we speak. So keep in mind, these nebulae, like the Orion Nebula, they have huge amounts of hydrogen and also molecular hydrogen, H2, as well as other elements that are in that particular interstellar medium location. But when these dark objects are formed, these dark objects are semi-spherical and they're very dark because they have a lot of dust in them. And there's a name for them, and they were found by a Dutch astronomer named Bart Bok, B-O-K. And Bart Bok, I had the pleasure of having him as a professor when I was getting my degree. And Bart Bok found what we call a Bok globule, which are these black little spots. And they're in the Orion Nebula. They're in a lot of other nebulae. And they were named for Bart. And, and he was the one who first observed them. And he theorized that they were kind of like insect cocoons in a way, an insect cocoon for stars. They collapse from the the gravitational collapse. And if a star is formed, then all that stuff is going to get blown away. And then boom, you have this brilliant star now sitting out in the middle of space. And so he likened them to cocoons. And one of the things that he found was that when these Bok globules were undergoing gravitational collapse, they would typically form more than one star at the same time, and perhaps star systems with planets, as I said, but many times multiple star systems. Now there's another offshoot of these dark globules that is in the Orion Nebula that we can see. We're actually going to try and search for them in the next SkyTour live stream. They're very hard to see because they're very, very tiny, but they're called Proplids, Proplyds. And what's that mean? It's a shortened, weird form of protoplanetary disks. Now, whereas the Bok globules represent an area where there's a mutual gravitation of dust and gas, Proplids may have started out as a Bok globule, but Proplids are actually externally illuminated, and they're associated with a very young star. Now, by young star, we mean a star that is what we call pre-main sequence, right? In other words, hydrogen fusion has not yet started. The star hasn't winked on, so to speak, hasn't winked on. So, in any case, these Proplids are evaporating a little by little. Here we go again. One moment, I'll be right back to you.
And while he's doing that, we actually had a question coming in on this very subject. Laura Lee wants to know, does dark matter play a role in the process, either of the formations or anything that you're explaining? Did you catch that?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Well, we don't actually know. We call it dark matter because we don't really know what it is. We know that dark dust is not what we're calling dark matter. Dark matter is a very different thing, and the dark dust that's in a nebula is not something that we would say it's dark matter. Remember, dark matter, dark energy. These were given the name dark, which is sort of an unfortunate name because calling it dark literally just means we don't know what it is. It doesn't mean it's black or it's dark. So it's not the same thing, but and I'm glad you asked that question, Lorelei, because it's a good time to actually clarify that. So thank you. Now these Proplids, though, that are being that have a young pre-main sequence non-hydrogen fusion yet star in the middle are interesting because these things are evaporating little by little, and they're kind of sometimes shaped like teardrops. And the reason is because other stars have this copious amounts of radiation that are going and filtering past these. And just like a wake behind a boat, sometimes the stellar winds, these highly charged particles moving away from these young stars that are elsewhere, can go by these proplyds and drag a tail out behind them. And we actually see them moving, see the tails moving. We can actually see the actual proplyds over time. They've actually been seen to move themselves because the radiation from the stars has been something that has moved them along and moved them through the nebula. It's really quite interesting. So now within the Orion Nebula, we have about 180 of these proplyds that have been found. 180. You should look them up. You look up proplyds, Proplyds. Okay, so prop LYDS, proplyds, and you look them up and you'll see that you have a bunch of them in the Orion Nebula. And there's one photo that I love. It shows about 10 or 12 of them. And the photo is large. I mean, huge. You have to download many, many megabytes of file to see it. But when you press on the plus sign and you let it magnify, it's absolutely astonishing to see all the detail that the Hubble Space Telescope could capture in the Orion Nebula, including these proplyds. So you're literally looking at an area where stars are forming, literally, and where potential planets can eventually form around the stars. Now, that dark dust doesn't have to get gravitationally bound to what becomes a star. It could stay near the star and circle the star just like it did in our solar nebula. And over time, maybe we would find that planets will form as well. It depends on the mass in the center. If the mass is like a mass of a star like the sun, then the stellar wind won't be something that might eject all that dust before it could actually form a planetary system. Now, they kind of form concurrently at the same time. That's what we really think. But you never know. So I think it's a very interesting, very, very interesting subject. The Orion Nebula is one of the most famous places in the northern sky. It's actually seen in the southern sky as well, actually. And it's sort of near the celestial equator, so the Orion Nebula could be seen all over the Earth. Here's a little sidebar for you. From the northern hemisphere, Betelgeuse is on the top left. Okay, Bellatrix is on the top right. You have the Belt of Three, and then the Orion Nebula is down below. In the southern hemisphere, on the other hand, when you look at Orion, well, you have Rigel on the top left. You have Saiph in the top right. And you have the Dagger next, down below you, down, in between them, down below. And the Belt of Three is below all those, below that. So it's upside down as viewed from the southern hemisphere. Which, in case any of you out there encounter a flat Earth person, you can say Orion wouldn't be upside down on the flat Earth if you look at it from the southern hemisphere. You got a little problem there. And they just ignore that. But anyway, I just thought I'd throw that in.
And our friend James from Australia is in here, so he can verify. And then again, flat earthers don't think Australia exists, so he might be talking to a brick wall there, but it's an excellent point.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, and we have people, and when they come to SkyTour Radio, they many times also are part of SkyTour Livestream. And SkyTour Radio reaches 1.4 million people. Isn't that incredible to think about that? We're actually able to reach 1.4 million people. It's a great benefit to a lot of people to actually be able to hear, real astronomy, and so far, I mean, the real science is good. Sometimes we go dense, like tonight we went a little bit dense, but something? It helps you understand where these nebulae come from and how that chemistry is operating there. And next time we go do a SkyTour live stream, if you join us, which I hope you do, and subscribe to us and hit the like button, you will find that a lot of what we say is stuff you'll have heard before. And you go, oh, I get it. I see now. Because we actually talk through the objects we see. We bring up an object in the screen, and I talk about it. And now that I've automated the observatory to the point where I can actually be inside and operate it remotely, now that leads to a lot longer streams, which if you recall, in the winter, I've only been able to. I've been out there like last winter. I think what was the thing? I do like 2 hours in the dome, and I had to leave. Amanda, I think I had to like leave after like 2 hours because it was so cold.
Probably.
Yeah.
Sounds about right.
Now I sit in here I can just sit in here and the heater's behind me. I'm in red lights. I've got my red lights on, and I see these beautiful things showing up on the screen. And guess what? I'm not cold. I can appreciate them, and I can sit right in front of them and watch them come in. I can do image processing on the fly, so everybody can watch how that happens and see it happening. So I really like that we can do that. And, among the things we've seen in Skytour Livestream are these other powerhouses of the sky. We've seen Belt of Three, of course. We've seen Alatak a lot in Skytour Livestream and other stars within Orion. But there's other stars that are very, very hot powerhouses, too. And they're really odd. They do strange things. And they have a special name. They're a special breed of star. And they're called Wolf-Rayet stars. Right, and that's Wolf, W-O-L-F, and then Rayet, R-A-Y-E-T, Wolf-Rayet stars. And so what are these hot powerhouses in the universe, and what do they look like? Well, they're very massive stars at very high temperatures, in excess of 25,000 Kelvin. That's basically 44,500 Fahrenheit and 24,700 Celsius. All right, they're many times the size of our sun. And they're characterized. We give them names that have a nomenclature where they're called WR stars, capital W, capital R, Wolf-Rayet, WR stars. And in Skytour Livestream, we've seen these. We've actually seen these, and they're characterized by very, very bright emission lines from certain elements that are in their spectrum. Okay, that are part of them. They're also characterized by something called mass loss. What's that mean? Well, when a star ages, for instance, like an older star like the sun, it's going to grow into a red giant, and its outer layers are going to get so far away from the star that they're going to not actually be gravitationally bound to the star anymore, and they'll just drift away. Maybe at supersonic speed, so not very fast. Well, this creates what we call a planetary nebula over time. The Dumbbell Nebula that we've seen is that. The Ring Nebula is that. There's a lot of nebula that we've seen that are that. All right, and this loss of that outer part of the star, the loss of that envelope of the star, the outer envelope, which is mostly hydrogen gas that never got into the center, okay, along with some of the elements that the star was made with. The loss of that envelope exposes the inner shells that are burning and fusing in the middle of the star. When it's a star like the sun that has died, it's exposing a white dwarf, which is the end state of a star's life. But with these Wolf-Rayet stars, that mass loss that occurs, it doesn't have a white dwarf in the center anymore. It's actually exposing the still fusing shells of, say, helium into carbon, for instance, in the middle. And they produce very, very high amounts of ultraviolet radiation. They're very, very powerful. And they cause like bubbles of material around the star. There's one called the Bubble Nebula, in fact, and it's exactly that. A Wolf-Rayet star that's actually sending out material. Now, the Wolf-Rayet star may have been a red giant at one point where it had run out of hydrogen, stopped using hydrogen, and began using other things. And when it does that, it begins to swell. Then those outer layers get lost from the star, and as I said, they drift away from the star. But then, in the Wolf-Rayet stars, what happens? They have this very, very hot ultraviolet radiation that comes out from the centers. And when that happens, that radiation shoots out at a very, very high speed. And it impacts this slow-moving material that was drifting away from the star when it was a red giant. And when it impacts that stuff, it'll bounce back and create a shock wave coming backwards, and it will actually cause the stuff to illuminate through this hydrogen alpha process we talked about and beyond, through other processes that illuminate the material. And so we end up seeing a similar nebula, for instance, to a planetary nebula when this happens. It's really just incredible. Now, in Skytour Livestream, we've seen the Crescent Nebula. All right, the Crescent Nebula was discovered by William Herschel in 1792, and we've seen it in our research telescope here, and we've shown you. It's caused by these high-speed stellar winds catching up to the previously ejected mass that was created by the star when it was in that red giant phase, like I had mentioned earlier. And where these high-speed stellar winds meet, okay, this material, it causes this ionization of that material and the glow that we see. But just like a bouncing ball, when these high-speed particles hit the slow-moving material, some of it gets reflected back to some extent. All right, and that causes a reflected shock wave back toward the star. And that causes collisions with other particles that are superheating additional particles. So this material ends up being extremely hot, extremely hot. And it's really odd. And, when we see other objects in the sky that look like they could be like planetary nebulae, which are the end state of stars with a white dwarf in the center, we have to be careful. We have to confirm it's actually a white dwarf. It may not be. It might be one of these Wolf-Rayet stars. Another one that we see in Skytour Livestream, we just saw this actually just the very last time, was an object that's a winter object that's to the left of Orion. It's called Thor's Helmet. Remember that one at all, Amanda?
I do.
Yeah. And what color was Thor's helmet? Do you remember?
I thought it was blue.
You're right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I always get nervous. I always second guess myself, but no, I quite clearly remember that one. We've seen it several times in the last few streams, and I don't remember seeing it before, so I like the new ones.
Yeah. Thor's helmet is a very, very dim object, but the fact is, it's an object that was created by this Wolf-Rayet star in the middle, and so the Wolf-Rayet star is creating this. I mean, the thing is actually is 30 light years across, right? And it's actually a good distance away. It's actually 1,670 parsecs, which is, you multiply that by 3.2 and 3.26, and you figure out how many light years, because it's 3.26 light years per parsec, and that is like the main. That's the main distance unit that we use in astronomy, is the parsec for distant things. And so this Thor's helmet object is 3,670 parsecs away, and that puts it at was it 11,000? No, sorry, not that. It's actually I went the wrong way. I was trying to calculate it here in my head, and I screwed up. It's a 3670 divided by 3.26 is what now? You'll do that in your head, right? No, I'm kidding. It's 1,125 light years away. But we're seeing this thing. We're seeing this thing just before the star in the middle goes supernova. Now, here's what's weird about these Wolf-Rayet stars. They look like the end state of a star. They look like the star has already died, leaving a nebula behind. Yet, the star in the middle is not dead yet. It's actually a very massive star approaching supernova phase. And these Wolf-Rayet stars are characterized by this loss of mass over time. So their outer envelopes go out, like I said. The thing that's funny about these is we don't often see hydrogen gas with some of these types of Wolf-Rayet stars. There's no hydrogen gas. Thor's helmet is blue. It's emitting in blue light. It's very strange, right? So I think that when we consider how this stuff actually works, we have to look at how stellar evolution works, and figure out how the chemistry works. It's just amazing. Now there is a H2 region here. There is an ionized hydrogen region to make that hydrogen alpha region as well. All right, and we're actually getting a number of emitted light products from this nebula. I think that, like I said, when we look at Thor's helmet and we look at other objects like it, we're actually seeing this strange stellar evolution going on that we've just never seen. I mean, Wolf-Rayet stars have been known for a while, but just now they're thinking, well, maybe we're wrong about what's in the center of planetary nebulae, because some of these Wolf-Rayet star nebulae look so much like planetary nebulae that maybe we've mistaken them. Maybe we've mistaken planetary nebulae. Maybe what's in the center isn't really a white dwarf, perhaps, or maybe, because we think they're a white dwarf, the end state, the hot core left over. But Wolf-Rayet stars' hot cores are still fusing helium into carbon and so forth in the middle. And white dwarfs are made of mostly carbon on their surfaces and oxygen. We see that. So are we actually looking at a Wolf-Rayet star? And are these nebulae going to then foster or close to when the Wolf-Rayet star finally does basically give up the ghost and stop doing its final fusion? Now that's pretty interesting to me. So they're very hot, they're very energetic, they cause all kinds of problems for any kind of stellar systems in any reasonable distance away, because clearly we could never survive in an area like that. Never would we survive near a Wolf-Rayet star. It would be like being hit with steel skewers. You'd be skewered in no time. You'd be torn to pieces by the radiation, and it'd probably be very quick. So I guess it would be a merciful way to go, I guess. But boy, let me tell you that these are. It's still unclear as to what these are really doing. What these Wolf-Rayet stars are really doing. We don't really know exactly what's going on in them. So I guess the point of this, and this is why I ended with Wolf-Rayet stars. The point of this is that even in astronomy, we don't recognize exactly what's happening in the universe. We have wonderful instrumentation. We have the James Webb Telescope going up. We have TESS up there that we talked about at the top of the show. And let me tell you, these are wonderful instruments. But for all of our technology, there's so much we don't yet understand. So much. And let me say something else. I want to thank you guys, those of you that stuck with me this 2 hours. I want to thank you for joining me for this 2 hours, because this was a very important setup for what's to come. And I think what's to come will make itself clear next week when we come back. So, on behalf of my co-host, Amanda Curran, and myself, I would like to thank you for listening to SkyTour Radio here on KGRAradio.com. And I will see you again, and she will see you again next week. So don't forget, keep looking up.
Except while you're driving.
You got it. Good night, folks.
Have a great week.